So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
You ever get a job and the people who hired you start to quit?
Good morning. It's Thursday, Gaslighting Thursday, May the 22nd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, headlines, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and gaslighting. All that and more when I get back. And by the way, on Monday, I will be having a special Memorial Day tribute podcast. Back in a minute. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now the headlines for Thursday, May the 22nd. Trump admin rolls out new tool to stop non-citizens from hijacking U.S. elections. Illegal immigration and birthright citizenship are under scrutiny as the Supreme Court addresses judicial activism and national policy implications. Marjorie Taylor Greene pushes bill to punish those who perform gender transition measures on minors. Trump DOJ officially charges House Democrat for assaulting ICE agent. Trump administration starts enforcing English language requirements for truck drivers. Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill has passed the House. Cheers erupt on the floor, 215 to 214. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, border security funding, and other major aspects of the Trump agenda. Report indicates Noah didn't even want all the Ark animals, but then spent the most time taking care of them. And those are the headlines for Thursday, May the 22nd. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the political corner.
My president is a gangster. Oh my God. Trump bought receipts, bro. Did y'all see that press conference today with South African President Ramaphosa? Bro, the Trump doctrine. Hell, we're not going to talk nice. We're going to bring receipts and we're going to keep it real. When they questioned the president, was there any genocide going on in South Africa? He said, you know what? I'm going to let the South African president answer that question. And after the South African president said all that bullshit, Trump said, check this out. I got some receipts. Yo, dim the lights. Turn off the lights and play the video. Boy, they sat there for about 3.5 minutes watching hateful videos about killing white South Africa. And the South African president had to sit there and listen to it. Boy, that's what I'm talking about. Forget all this rhetoric. If y'all ain't learned about Trump and the new doctrine, it's not about being nice. It's about keeping it real.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Patriotic Short.
In April 2020, the U.S. Navy announced that it would bring back the frigate, a class of warship that had not been in service since the last Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigate was decommissioned in 2015. The new frigate, known as the FHEX, will be a more modern and capable vessel than its predecessor, with a focus on anti-submarine warfare, surface warfare, and air defense. The decision to bring back the frigate was not made lightly. It was based on a combination of factors, including the changing global security environment, advances in technology, and the need for a more versatile and cost-effective warship. Another factor that has contributed to the decision to bring back the frigate is advances in technology. The new FFGX frigate will incorporate the latest advances in radar, sonar, and weapon systems, making it a more capable and versatile warship.
And that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, time to get motivated.
How many more nights of sleep you gonna lose running around complaining about your life?
Stop being a lazy, bum-ass person that's full of excuses, sitting around on the pity potty, coming up with every excuse in the world as to why you ain't winning. You are the reason you're not winning. You are the reason you look the way you look. You are the reason you're unemployed. You are the reason why your surroundings are so dysfunctional and negative. It's a choice. You have thought your way into a depression. You have thought your way into negativity and misery. It's all in the mind. Change your mind and it will change your life. It's time you get off the pity potty. Stop complaining about being out of shape when you never go to the gym. Stop looking at your stomach when you get out of the shower and your body and complaining about the way you look when you're eating everything in in sight and never going to the gym. You just have to wake up. You just have to break that negative spirit. You have to break through all of that shit that you're carrying.
You want to improve? You want to get on a workout program or a clean diet or start a new business? You want to write a book or make a movie or build a house or a computer or an app? Where do you start? You start right here. When do you start? You start right now.
You gotta have the mentality to show up every day of your life, no matter what life throws at you. It's our responsibility to show up to the Coliseum of life, prepare for battle.
If you can get through to doing things that you hate to do, on the other side is greatness.
The savage mindset, when things are going bad, guess what they do? Quitting's out of the question. All they think about is how am I gonna get through this? There's no quitting, it's just get through and thrive, not survive.
You gotta get comfortable being uncomfortable. Every day you have to do this shit. Because why? When you stop doing it, you don't just maintain it. If you stop shooting a gun, you're not gonna be a great shot when you pick a gun up a year from now. The only way to keep from getting rusty is to constantly over that motherfucking machine. The machine exists. You gotta keep challenging every day.
No one wants to grind. They just want the end result. You can't get the end result without the grind. But you gotta crave that end result so intensely that the work becomes irrelevant. But if you really want to set some goals and you're willing to do what it takes and sacrifice to put yourself around there and not worry about what everybody else is going to say, not worry about hurting feelings, you're guaranteed success in whatever you do.
And that was Motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little meditation.
Falling behind.
And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Daily Stoic.
Protecting our inner fortress from fear. No, it is events that give rise to fear. When another has power over them or can prevent them, that person becomes able to inspire fear. How is the fortress destroyed? Not by iron or fire, but by judgments. Here is where we must begin, and it is from this front that we must seize the fortress and throw out the tyrants. Epictetus, Discourses, 4.1.85 through 86 and 87a. The Stoics give us a marvelous concept, the inner citadel. It is this fortress, they believed, that protects our soul. Though we might be physically vulnerable, though we might be at the mercy of fate in many ways, our inner domain is impenetrable. As Marcus Aurelius put it, repeatedly in fact, stuff cannot touch the soul. But history teaches us that impenetrable fortresses can still be breached if betrayed from the inside. The citizens inside the walls, if they fall prey to fear or greed or avarice, can open the gates and let the enemy in. This is what many of us do when we lose our nerve and give in to fear. You've been granted a strong fortress. Don't betray it.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron.
The fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. The fruit of service is peace. Peace, right? That's the thing we all want. Everybody in this world. That's what we all want. But you got to begin with silence. Look, I'm kind of a driven person. You got to accomplish something and do, go. And okay, that's good as far as it goes. But the real joy comes when we can sit quietly, silently, and savor. Do we take the time to do that? To waste time with God. I love that definition of prayer, by the way. How do we hear Him? By making silent our own voice, our own minds, our own worries, our own preoccupations. Silence them. And what rises in our heart is the voice of...
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. And now the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, politically, the draft is clearly unconstitutional. No amount of rationalization, neither by the Supreme Court nor by private individuals, can alter the fact that it represents involuntary servitude. A volunteer army is the only proper, moral, and practical way to defend a free country. Should a man volunteer to fight if his country is attacked? Yes, if he values his own rights and freedom, unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter, The Wreckage of the Consensus, from the book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, gaslighting.
Gaslighting is a type of manipulation that occurs in abusive relationships. It is when the abuser makes the victim question their sense of reality and their sanity. For example, the abuser would do something abusive, like call the victim a bad name. Then the victim would get mad, as any normal person would, and then the abuser would convince the victim that they're just too sensitive. And in the end, the victim would find themselves apologizing to the abuser even though they didn't start the problem in the first place.
And that was gaslighting. Back in a minute.
Thank you, Maria, then Stu.
Thank
Thank you. And to everybody out there, have a safe Memorial Day weekend and hug your families over the weekend, please. And we will see you. I will see you next week. Varney and Company picks it up now with the market down. This morning, the Dow Industrial is down 105 despite Congress passing out of the House President Trump's big, beautiful bill. It heads over to the Senate now. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. 2 young Israeli diplomats shot on the street in Washington, D.C. The alleged killer shouted, "Free, free Palestine," as he was taken into custody. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram were about to be engaged. This is an outrage. Violent anti-Semitism in America and on our streets. President Trump posted this: "Hatred and radicalism have no place in the USA. So sad that such things can happen." Separately, within the last few hours, the House passed Trump's big, beautiful bill. The vote was 215 to 214. 2 Republicans vote no, 1 said present. In my opinion, this is the most pro-worker, pro-business bill in decades. The market was in sell-off mode until the news of the bill's passage came through, then a brief rally. Now stocks have returned to the downside a little bit. Dow's off 70, S&P, though, now up a couple. Nasdaq's struggling for a 57-point lead at this moment. Mixed market, mixed reaction. Now look at Bitcoin. New high. It hit 111,500. That's exactly where it is now. I should tell you that tonight, President Trump hosts a black-tie dinner at the White House for the people who bought his meme coin. Here's a problem for stocks. Interest rates moving up, some more. The 10-year Treasury touched 460 earlier, now it's at 459. The 2-year back above the 4%. No, I'm sorry, it's at 399. It had been above 4% earlier. The 30-year Treasury, pay attention to that one, we're moving up to 5.1%. That's the long bond, 5.1%. On the show today, more on what's in the big, beautiful bill. No tax on tips or overtime. A big assault deduction. You want Medicaid? You've got to work for it. No illegals on Medicaid. Lower taxes for business. More write-offs for business. And a whole lot more. This is a growth bill, but it does raise the deficit in the short term. We'll have a lot more on the shooting of those 2 young Jewish people on the streets in Washington, D.C. A reporter caught up with the pro-Hamas Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She had nothing to say except, "I'm going now," and then scurried off down the Capitol Hill steps. What a disgrace. It is Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. Varney.
And that's Varney and Company. And he cares about these news items only because they will increase profits. What is it? If it bleeds, it leads. That's the motto of for-profit news. Non-profit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding 2 things are true and convincing 1 thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in 1 thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In 1 thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Candace. Why? Because women speaking French is so hot.
Le handicap invisible. D'accord? Parce que manque pas un bras, une jambe, donc forcément pour le handicap. Je vous explique. Là, je me laisse pas passer, c'est un casse contre un mur, c'est pas compliqué. Les gens derrière, j'ai décidé qu'à partir d'aujourd'hui, toute personne qui, je ne peux pas la comparer parce qu'ils me font jamais du mal comme ça, qui me fait du mal, qui me regarde torcher avec ma carte handicap, je souhaite l'algie vasculaire de la face, mais jusqu'à la fin de leur vie, qui pleurent de douleur et qui se rappellent ce que c'est. Enfin, comme ça, vous êtes au courant, parce que moi, je ne peux plus supporter cette folie du faciès du handicap, où genre, tu ressembles pas à une handicapée, comme ça. J'ai la maladie, écoutez-moi bien, la plus douloureuse au monde. C'est-à-dire que c'est le numéro 1 sur le podium, après l'accouchement. Donc, vous avez bien compris. Sauf que l'accouchement, il y a un gosse qui sort à la fin, moi, il n'y a rien. Donc, je vous dis une chose. Je ne vais absolument plus me gêner. Je ne vais plus attendre dans aucune fille ni rien du tout parce que ça me vole ma vie, l'algie.
And that was Candace. Back in a minute. Thank you. Law and order again.
Left the door open in those cases where the public interest outweighs the intrusion, and this is one of those cases. The New York Department of Health and the CDC are involved due to the potential for a major health crisis. We're not making this request lightly.
So there you go. He says where the public interest outweighs the intrusion. He doesn't refer to it as the individual's rights. He calls it an intrusion. But the fact of the matter is the government has no rights, but the character in this, the assistant district attorney, is acting as though he does, as though he has the right to get this tissue sample. Wrong. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 3 of Gaslighting.
Passionate, confident, and out for control. How to avoid falling for a gaslighter in the first place. Maggie, age 27, quote, "On our second date, he talked about how great his former marriage was. I asked him why it ended. He told me it was none of my business. That should have been a clue." End quote. Before you even get involved with a gaslighter, there are usually a number of signs you can learn to spot. In fact, signs present in the early stages of dating gaslighters will often tell you everything you need to know about how sticking with them will be detrimental to your well-being. A few things to know up front. For starters, gaslighters tend to live in larger cities. They need anonymity to succeed at their game. In a big city, it's less likely that word of their bad behavior will get around, and the chances that you'll run into one of their former partners, for example, will decrease as well. Of course, if you live in a city, you aren't going to want to avoid all eligible prospects just because they live in your city too, but it's one piece of the puzzle that's good to bear in mind. For some of the same reasons, relative anonymity, unlikelihood that you'll run into an ex, online dating has been a boon for gaslighters. There are other reasons too, which we'll look at in a moment. I'll also list some first date red flags and discuss how gaslighters target their victims, whom they see as easy prey, and how not to get romantically involved if your gut tells you something is off. Vanessa, age 24, quote, "I must be a magnet for manipulators. I guess I'm just too nice and try to see the good in people. I refuse to get bitter about it. Then they've won." End quote. Online dating. Apps and websites have become our default mode for dating. We find it easier to meet a potential mate via the internet rather than the old standbys of friends, bars, social gatherings, and work. It's no surprise why. These days, our digital devices are always in our hands. Plus, it's efficient and in some ways less frightening. You can get a feel for someone before you actually have to talk with the person or interact face to face. However, everything has side effects. The negative side of online dating is that it can make you an easier target for gaslighters and other creeps. It's also no surprise that gaslighters like dating apps and websites so much. They can be whomever they want in their profile. They can tell you exactly what you want to hear. Via online dating, gaslighters have access to many people, potential victims, they otherwise wouldn't have met, and they can easily spot clues of vulnerability in people's profiles. Understanding these clues, which we usually give out so unwittingly, is a good first line of defense. What makes the gaslighter pick you? Out of all the online dating profiles, what makes a gaslighter contact you? First, lest you think you've been singularly clueless or otherwise to blame, understand that you are rarely the only one. Especially because of the efficiencies of dating apps, gaslighters will usually have many potential targets. As you learned in Chapter 1, scarcity is a tactic favored by gaslighters, and online dating makes the scarcity game very easy to play. You are chatting back and forth with someone, and then, poof, he disappears. You question what happened. You look up articles to try to figure out whether he is interested. You convince yourself that men are emotional rubber bands. The closer they get, the more they pull back. Just when you are about to give up, the gaslighter shows up again. He has invoked scarcity. If you respond by playing it cool and acting as if nothing happened, you'll usually pass the test, and the gaslighter will continue to contact you. If you ask too many questions, such as, "Why were you ignoring my messages?" the gaslighter will probably drop you like a hot potato, blame you, and even accuse you of being desperate. This is because the gaslighter sensed from your response that you would be someone likely to hold him accountable for his behavior in the future, and he doesn't want that. The way things start with someone is usually how they go from that point forward. If you meet someone who doesn't even give an explanation for not contacting you before a first date, how do you think the rest of that relationship is going to work? The best course of action when encountering someone who ghosts and reappears is to not respond and move on. If your online profile indicates that you have been single for a while, have been married multiple times, appear to have money, say you see the best in everyone, haven't been treated well in the past, think your ex was a terrible person, want children right away, never felt that you fit in, like taking risks, are naughty, bad, wild, you may as well have painted a bullseye on your forehead. These are the very vulnerabilities gaslighters look for. Gaslighters will often rightly assume that if you allude to the things in this list, you are more likely both to get hooked on them and to be more tolerant of their bad behavior. You may be thinking, but why would anybody put these things in their profile? Few people would, in so many words. But we often communicate plenty about ourselves without stating them directly. We say a lot by what we imply. I'm ready to be treated well equals I haven't been treated well in the past. I'm tired of wasting time equals I'm concerned I won't meet the right person. I see the best in everyone equals I may accept your lying to me. So, what should you put in your profile to make yourself more gaslighter-proof? It's a tricky fine line, but ultimately, you want to show that you are active and happy. Gaslighters don't like partners who are positive, upbeat, and independent. They prefer them to be needy, vulnerable, and wounded. Red flags on your first date. Sorry, age 35. Quote, I knew this date wasn't going to work out, and my date said some things that really offended me. I told him this wasn't going to work, and I was going to leave early. He banged his fist on the table and said I wasn't going to leave yet. That was my cue to get out of there fast. End quote. One of the trickiest things about gaslighters is that they are great at hiding their true personality until you are hooked in. According to Wendy Patrick, JD, PhD, in her article entitled The Dangerous First Date in the December 2017 issue of Psychology Today, malignant behaviors can masquerade as charming positives in the early stages of dating. For example, protective behavior morphs into possessiveness. Comforting turns into controlling. Assertive behavior turns into aggressive behavior. Passionate behavior turns violent later on. A direct personality turns into rudeness. And confidence turns into condescension. Keep an eye out for these behaviors whenever you are on a date. For example, while it may feel comforting as if you are being taken care of when your date orders your food for you, when you haven't even told him what you want, this is actually a sign of a controlling personality. It feels good at first. But once things are getting real, your partner will be trying to control all your choices in the relationship. Red flags on a first date with gaslighters include: they tell you that you are the most beautiful, wonderful, amazing person they have ever met. They talk about long-term commitment with you. They talk about having children, not just in general, but with you. They talk about themselves. It's almost as if you weren't there. They tell you they cheated in a previous relationship. They tell you about their dysfunctional family history. They don't ask you any questions about your life. They don't want to talk about their family. They order your food for you. They don't use basic manners. They treat waitstaff rudely. They talk about moving in with you. They start holding hands or having other physical contact with you right away. They invade your personal space. They tell you their previous partner was a bitch, asshole, and the like. They spend too much time talking about their previous relationships. They tell you they have commitment issues, but that they could see committing to you. They are vague about what they do for a living. Their story doesn't match up with what you read online. Their stories aren't consistent. They talk about their houses and cars, yet they did not drive their car to your date. They dress sloppily. They wear clothing that denotes social status, wearing surgical scrubs to dinner, for example. A true surgeon would never do this. They name drop, tell you about well-known people with whom they are friends or colleagues in a bid to impress you. They say they have a well-paying job but ask you to pay for dinner. They will say they forgot their wallet, etc. They talk about travel in other countries that sounds fanciful or unrealistic. They do this because it's hard to verify. They have excuses for why you couldn't find information on them, their identity was stolen, etc. They have difficulty making eye contact. They're charming, but it appears not to be genuine. They mention how they had a lot of options to choose from, but picked you. They will not leave when asked. They prevent you from leaving. Again, no one of these items on its own necessarily means you're on a date with a gaslighter. But buyer beware. The signs are usually there. Jessica, age 30, quote, "The first things he talked about on our date, his ex-wife and his mother, and not in a pleasant way either," end quote. The lure of narcissism. Sometimes gaslighting looks an awful lot like narcissism. Narcissistic people tend to look good on paper. They seem too good to be true because they are. They may be educated, powerful, attractive people, and they also happen to be dangerous manipulators. What appears as confidence, the likes of which you have never seen before, can be intoxicating until you realize it's part of a pattern, a selfish and endless need for validation. A history of cheating. Gaslighters are notorious for being unfaithful in relationships. If someone you are dating tells you she cheated in a previous relationship, pay attention to the red flag. According to a study in 2017 by Kayla Knopp and her colleagues, people who cheated in a previous relationship are 3 times more likely to report cheating in their current relationship than are people who were faithful in previous relationships. If you're having a quote-unquote good date, it can be tempting to think that your date just had a one-off cheating experience, and it won't impact you, or she may tell you she's changed. But think again. Cheaters tend to cheat as a pattern of behavior. If you are cheated on, it will affect your future relationships as well. It will sow the seeds of doubt about your potential partner's reliability, if nothing else. In fact, according to Ms. Knopp, people who reported that their previous partner had cheated were 4 times more likely to be suspicious of their current partner. Gaslighters push alcohol on you. Gaslighters will often order alcohol for you without asking. If you don't order alcohol yourself, gaslighters will cajole and even bully you into ordering a drink. They do this because drinking lowers our inhibitions and raises the possibility that we'll make poor choices. It is best to abstain from drinking while on a date with someone new. However, if you do choose to drink, never leave your drink unattended. I'm sure you've heard about people slipping drugs into drinks, and this dramatically increases your chances of being assaulted. Later in this chapter, you'll learn why gaslighters are particularly prone to committing assault. Gaslighters don't do social media. Because cheating is so common among gaslighters, avoiding social media is a way to avoid getting caught with someone or somewhere they aren't supposed to be. If you go on a date and a person tells you he doesn't use Facebook, it could just be that he's not into Facebook. But I suggest following up by asking why. Gaslighters will usually give you a vague answer. If they say, "I'm just not into it," or "I don't have time," take note. Trust your intuition. Most of us get hunches or a spidey sense that something is wrong. And very often, these are right on target. If you feel that a situation or person is unsafe to be around, excuse yourself and leave. You don't even have to excuse yourself. Gaslighters sense when people are onto them, and they will switch modes quickly into love bombing. Gaslighters are masters of pouring it on in the nick of time, getting you to switch from thinking, "This person gives me bad vibes," to, "Wow, I really like him." So get out while you can. Override the urge to be nice. We, and especially women, are taught from young ages to be caring and polite toward others. It can go against what you believe to stand up to someone and tell them to back off. Remember that the gaslighter does not care about you or your feelings. You are a thing, disposable, a means to an end. It is perfectly acceptable to stand up for yourself and risk being seen as rude. For example, if you are saying goodnight to your date at your car and he leans in too close to you, instead of enduring it or trying to wriggle away, say, "No, I need you to back up." If he doesn't move, say it even louder. Remember, with a gaslighter, you cannot afford to be concerned with being rude. You have to be concerned with your personal safety. Gaslighters and the risk of violence. In case you didn't already have enough to worry about, the risks of violence with gaslighters is very real. They are more prone to getting violent because their frustration threshold is so low, and they generally don't have good coping skills. You should be prepared to protect yourself. As noted earlier, when you are on a first date with anyone, never leave your drink unattended, no matter what. Even if your date tells you there is no need to worry or that you are being paranoid. If that means you need to take your drink to the bathroom with you, do it. Better yet, refrain from drinking, as we've already discussed. A gaslighter will pressure you to drink so as to make you more vulnerable. A good person will never pressure you to drink. If your date is pressuring you to drink, he may well be setting you up for assault or rape. I don't have any specific data to support the connection between gaslighting and rape, but since rape is a crime of power and violence, we're wise to include it in this list of cautions. For information on sexual assault, listen to Chapter 5 and refer to the downloadable PDF included with this audiobook.
And that's the latest chapter in the book Gaslighting, Recognize Manipulative and Emotionally Abusive People and Break Free, from Stephanie Moulton Sarkis, PhD. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.